The palace's worst nightmare. Prince Harry's secret plot to build a rival court. What looked like a simple editorial published in a political magazine was actually a devastating metaphor for a fractured family and a highly calculated act of psychological warfare. It was a cold Tuesday morning when King Charles arrived in Golders Green, North London. The monarch was there on a solemn mission to console a grieving Jewish community following a horrific local incident. It was a moment of quiet dignity, requiring empathy presence and the full weight of the crown. Yet, almost to the exact minute that the king stepped out of his vehicle to offer his support, an extensive, heavily calibrated essay on the exact same topic of anti-Semitism was published thousands of miles away in the New Statesman. The author of that essay was Prince Harry. To the untrained eye, this was merely a coincidence. But to those who understand the relentless and ruthless machinery of the Sussex public relations team, this was a chillingly deliberate maneuver. It was a microaggression disguised as philanthropy. This is the story of a shadow campaign, a multi-front war on the British Monarchy orchestrated by a couple who publicly demanded a private life, only to realize that privacy does not pay the bills. This video will unpack the terrifying reality of what palace insiders are quietly calling Project Thor, how a staggering level of commercial desperation has birthed a sinister strategy to infiltrate the royal fold, and why what is happening right now is Prince William and Princess Catherine's absolute worst nightmare. To truly understand the audacity of this current royal invasion, we must first remember the golden era that preceded the collapse. When the Duke and Duchess of Sussex first abandoned their royal duties, they were draped in the untouchable armor of victimhood and global sympathy. They promised a new paradigm. They were going to build a billion-dollar media empire based on compassion, unburdened by the archaic constraints of the British establishment. They secured gargantuan contracts with Spotify and Netflix. They had the Oprah interview. They had the world in the palm of their hands. But public goodwill is a finite resource, especially when it is constantly weaponized. Fast forward to the present, and the landscape is entirely barren. The Spotify deal imploded amid accusations of a lack of productivity. The Hollywood rebrand has stalled into an uncomfortable silence. The lifestyle brand launches have been met with profound public apathy. The contrast of schadenfreude is undeniable. The couple that once commanded the global stage is now facing the terrifying reality of commercial desperation. Their singular remaining currency is their proximity to the very institution they spent years attempting to dismantle, and so a new, deeply cynical strategy was born. If they could not conquer Hollywood, they would have to conquer London again, not as returning prodigal children, but as an invading force. The chronology of this covert operation is essential to understand. The first major rupture occurred in late 2025. Following a period of intense public isolation, Prince Harry secured a brief, private meeting with his father at Clarence House. On paper, it was framed as a son visiting a monarch battling illness, but behind closed doors, it was the first subtle breach in the palace walls. Up until that point, King Charles had maintained a relatively firm boundary, guided by the strict parameters of the Megxit agreement. But Charles is a father in his late 70s, he is battling cancer, he longs to see his grandchildren, and the Sussex public relations machine knew exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. This brings us to the inception of Project Thor, revealed by veteran royal journalists, and deeply embedded palace sources. Project Thor is not merely a rumor. It is a coordinated, systemic establishment operation designed to rehabilitate Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and slowly draw them back into British public life. This is where the story shifts from a family dispute to an issue of institutional integrity. This plot is reportedly backed by senior government figures, top-tier civil servants, and left-leaning politicians who view the Sussex's progressive narrative as politically useful. These unelected bureaucrats and sympathetic politicians are quietly working behind the scenes to engineer a return that the British public never voted for and explicitly does not want. The evidence of this campaign began bleeding into the public domain through highly aggressive, seemingly bizarre demands from Montecito. Out of nowhere, Prince Harry began writing forceful letters to the UK Home Secretary, demanding a fresh security risk assessment. He wanted the automatic police protection he had previously lost in court. He demanded the police outriders, the flashing lights, the helicopters, the visible trappings of state power. This had absolutely nothing to do with personal safety. We are talking about a man who recently traveled to a war zone in Eastern Europe for a television interview, seemingly unbothered by the catastrophic security risks there. The demand for UK police protection was purely a flex of ego and status. It was a calculated attempt to force the British government To officially validate his importance, he wants to return to the United Kingdom and be treated as a high-level VIP, an active working royal, without being bound by any of the duties, neutrality, or sacrifices that the role actually requires. When the British government did not immediately capitulate, the Sussex machine escalated their tactics. If they could not get the official royal red carpet, they would simply manufacture their own. By early 2026, the world witnessed the launch of the quasi-royal tours, from Nigeria to Colombia, and eventually culminating in a highly controversial itinerary in Australia. Harry and Meghan began executing what can only be described as a staggering exploitation of the royal playbook. They visited children's hospitals, they inspected military veterans, they met with local dignitaries. They completely co-opted the visual language of the British monarchy. It was an astonishing moral contradiction. Here were two individuals who had accused the royal family of structural cruelty and racism, now desperately cosplaying as working royals to generate content and secure international relevance. They were presenting themselves as oven-ready royals, a fully functioning, glamorous alternative to the actual working members of the firm. This was not just about getting their pictures in the press. It was about laying the groundwork for a deeply sinister end goal, a concept that is currently sending shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, the creation of a rival court. Harry does not want to return to the family to stand quietly in the background on the Buckingham Palace balcony. He wants to establish a separate, fully functioning royal ecosystem operating on British soil on his own terms. He wants to host high-level engagements, run massive charitable summits, and command international attention directly competing with the Prince and Princess of Wales. The timing of Harry's anti-Semitism article dropping at the exact moment of King Charles's visit to Golders Green was not an accident. It was a declaration of war. It was a message that the Sussex court can and will upstage the Windsor court whenever it chooses. But the most devastating element of this entire operation is not coming from California. It is coming from inside the palace itself. The establishment of this rival court requires internal accomplices, and the Sussexes have reportedly found one in a highly influential, newly appointed palace aide, a smooth-talking diplomat credited with smoothing over international relations. This aide is now aggressively pushing for a total reconciliation. He is quietly attempting to engineer the impossible, a forced behind-closed-doors handshake between Prince Harry and Prince William. He is whispering in the ear of a vulnerable, aging king, urging him to override the strict boundaries that William has fiercely protected. The palace is now entirely fractured behind the scenes. On one side stands a king, whose emotional weakness is being systematically weaponized against the crown. On the other side stands the Prince of Wales, who sees the rival court for exactly what it is, a lethal threat to the future of the monarchy. And as this new palace aide prepares to force William into a room with the brother who sold out his family for a Netflix paycheck, the royal family is hurtling toward a catastrophic point of no return. To understand the sheer gravity of this forced reconciliation, you have to look at the psychological warfare that has been waged over the last 4 years. For Prince William, holding the line against his brother is no longer a matter of stubbornness or simple sibling rivalry. It is a matter of institutional survival and profound personal protection. The narrative pushed by the newly empowered palace, aides, and quietly supported by political figures involved in Project Thor, suggests that a simple handshake behind closed doors could heal the divide. But this dangerously misreads the psychological reality of the situation. You cannot negotiate a peace treaty with someone who monetizes the negotiation. For the Prince and Princess of Wales, every private conversation, every text message, and every unspoken gesture has historically been treated as harvestable content by the Sussex PR machine. A handshake is not a resolution. It is a trap. It is an opportunity for a new chapter in a memoir, a fresh anecdote for a televised interview, or a carefully leaked narrative to a sympathetic journalist. William understands that granting Harry proximity is equivalent to handing over live ammunition. This is why the internal palace warfare is so devastating right now. You have an aging king compromised by illness and a natural paternal desire for peace, being pressured by smooth-talking diplomats to break the very quarantine that his heir has meticulously built to protect his wife and children. The subtle visual signals over the past year have carried devastating, deeper meaning. While the Sussexes have engaged in performative, high-visibility, quasi-royal tours, desperate to project an illusion of global power, the Waleses have operated with a weaponized restraint. Think of Princess Catherine's appearances following her severe health battles. There was no grandstanding, no demands for public validation, and no exploitation of her vulnerability. Her stoicism was a silent, lethal rebuke to the Montecito model of weaponized victimhood. The contrast is jarring. On one side, you have a couple who demand security status and unyielding public adoration while offering nothing in return. On the other, you have duty, quiet endurance, and the absolute refusal to engage in a public tit-for-tat. But the relentless Sussex machine does not sleep, and the danger of the rival court they are attempting to build in the United Kingdom cannot be overstated. If Project Thor is successful and Prince Harry is permitted to establish a permanent, semi-official operating base in Britain, it will create a constitutional nightmare. A rival court means competing patronages, conflicting schedules, and a constant, exhausting media battle for supremacy. It means that every time the Prince and Princess of Wales launch a meaningful initiative, the Sussexes will inevitably drop a coordinated announcement, an essay or a staged paparazzi photo shoot on the exact same day to hijack the global news cycle. We have already seen the blueprint for this sabotage with the timing of Harry's essay in The New Statesman. It is not about charity. It is about tactical proximity and commercial dominance. This strategy exposes the ultimate moral contradiction at the heart of the Sussex brand. They fled the United Kingdom, claiming the environment was toxic and deeply damaging to their mental health. They explicitly stated they wanted a private life. Yet every single move they make is designed to force their way back into the very spotlight they claim to despise, demanding the exact privileges of the institution they tried to burn to the ground. The public sees this staggering hypocrisy clearly. The approval ratings for the couple in the UK are frozen in a state of absolute permafrost. The British public wishes them no active harm, but there is a profound collective exhaustion. The audience recognizes that this return is not driven by duty or patriotism, but by the terrifying realization that their Hollywood rebrand has failed and their commercial viability is entirely dependent on their royal association. This is why this story resonates far beyond the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace. At its core, this is not just a royal drama. It is a universal story about family estrangement and the agonizing difficulty of holding boundaries against someone who refuses to respect them. Millions of viewers recognize this dynamic in their own lives. The toxic family member who demands the privileges of the family table but refuses to adhere to the rules of the house. The individual who uses therapy speak to justify their own destructive behavior while remaining entirely blind to the collateral damage they leave in their wake. People are watching this saga unfold, not just for the gossip, but because it is a masterclass in how to navigate the ultimate betrayal. Looking forward, the monarchy is standing on the edge of a precipice. The tension between King Charles's emotional vulnerability and Prince William's ironclad resolve will define the future of the crown. If the establishment insiders pushing Project Thor manage to break the king's resolve, if they successfully rehabilitate Harry into a hybrid royal role, they will validate the Sussexes' entire strategy of public warfare. It will prove that you can attack the institution, betray your family, sell their secrets, and still be rewarded with the prestige and security you demand. It would be a fatal blow to the moral authority of the monarchy. However, if Prince William holds the line and the quasi-royal tours are exposed for the empty, commercially driven exercises they are, the Sussexes will face the ultimate isolation. The illusion of power will shatter completely, leaving only the reality of their exile. The next few months will be critical. Every subtle PR move, every leaked story, and every carefully timed public appearance will carry immense weight. The machine in Montecito is desperate, and desperation breeds unpredictable, highly aggressive tactics. This is no longer a story about a second son finding his freedom. It is a story about a relentless campaign to rewrite history, manipulate the public, and force a capitulation from a 1,000-year-old institution. The war is far from over and the stakes have never been higher. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. We will continue to track these developments with the exact forensic detail you have come to expect. Until next time, stay observant.